Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Powell. I am the Deputy of User Services for EMSL, and I was asked to come here today and give a talk about how to submit, how to write and submit a successful proposal to the EMSL user program. So I'm going to share with you a few thoughts that have I've developed, my predecessors have developed, people I work with have developed, even some input from users, all of which is really great suggestions. Some of the themes you will hear over and over, and you should make note of it because those are really good key points to keep in mind. EMSL is an excellent way to accelerate your research, but it is extremely competitive. On a 3-year rolling basis, we have just under 200 user proposals, and the acceptance rate is just under 30%. So it is very competitive, but we do encourage you to be persistent and reapply, and hopefully you will be successful. And so my hope today, if I can get these slides to go, is to give you some insight into what makes a successful proposal and improve your chances on being successful. First, I think it is important to kind of understand, these are some of the highlights I'm going to go over today, why you should apply. It's important to also understand what our general calls are like in the call cycle. And then I'll kind of walk you through the proposal process that we have, and then share with some of our scientific staff and leaders some tips and tricks, as well as common mistakes that we see during this process. So I'm sharing here some of these tips from one of our EMSL users, actually, who is on the UEC, Kevin Solomon, from a presentation he did on a similar topic here. And I think these are kind of really helpful tips to set the stage as to why you want to apply to EMSL. The first one that you really can't go wrong with is it's free. It is a successful proposal comes at no cost to you, and you do have the opportunity to work with some leading EMSL scientific instrumentation staff and resources on your proposal. It's also a very good barrier for you to enter into the DOE BER landscape funding opportunity and make connections that way. So there are a lot of great opportunities there. Okay, now I'd like to kind of turn into give you an understanding of what our proposal calls look like throughout the year and what the annual cycle of that is, so that you could be prepared if you did have an idea of how to go about that process and where to find all that information. So we offer several different calls throughout the year. Our first one that's up here is our EMSL large scale research. This is research that's with EMSL resources only. These proposals typically last up to 24 months in duration. The proposal cycle, you can see, is open in the winter months. It requires an LOI, and it goes through that external peer review process. Awards are made in the summertime, and then they would start October 1st of the fiscal year. So we just had a new batch start this week, and they'll run for 24 months. The next one on here is our exploratory research. Again, this is an EMSL only call. It is much shorter in duration, typically lasts 9 to 10 months. We are in the midst of our peer review process for that call at the moment. And I think when I walked in, there was some discussion about the new dual anonymous peer review process, and that's what we are piloting on that call. So we're right in the midst of that. Those award notifications will go out at the end of November, and those projects would start in December and go through the end of the fiscal year, so 9 to 10 months in duration. Again, this type of proposal requires a letter of intent, and then if successful, you'd be invited for a full proposal submission. And the last significant one up here is our FICUS research. Our FICUS program, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that, is a collaboration between multiple user facilities. So with one proposal mechanism, you would get access to multiple user facilities, which is a great technique. And I think I'm looking at Jeff. I know you had a successful FICUS proposal. And so we currently have one call with the Joint Genome Institute and we also have some other facilities that share capabilities in that call. So you could get access to both those facilities. We also recently started a FICUS proposal with the ARM institution, the ARM user facility, the atmospheric and radiation program. So I think this collaboration has been great for both the user facilities and users in general. And it's an opportunity where I see a lot of growth for us in that call. This call typically runs somewhat similar to our large scale research call time cycle, does require a letter of intent. These projects last 24 to 30 months, and it's that same cycle of apply during the winter months, notifications in the summer. Projects would start at the start of our fiscal year on October 1. Okay. So, I should back up here. I missed a few things. So where to find this information? Every year in our annual calls, there are different call topics that we ask you to specifically address. They're usually grouped into our 3 science areas: environmental transformations and interactions, functional and systems biology, and then computing, analytics, and modeling. And on our website, when we release our call, you'll see all the information about the call topics, any highlighted capabilities that we'd be asking you to respond to, and all that information along with dates and submission details can be found on the EMSL website here, where you can see the URL at the bottom. In addition, we have a great communications team that is very active on social media. So if you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now Instagram, you can stay abreast of all the information there. All right, so I think it's also helpful to just kind of understand once you submit, or if you're planning to submit to an EMSL proposal call, what actually happens during that process. I've kind of given a little bit of information here. But the first activity here is that we release our calls for proposals. At that time, there'll be a social media campaign. The content will be released on the EMSL website. All of the details about how to submit, proposal guidance, all of that information would be made available at that time on the website. And you would have several months in order to work, or excuse me, several weeks in order to work on your letter of intent submission. All of these proposals that I mentioned here do require a letter of intent. The vast majority of these are invited for a full proposal. It is a way for us to gauge, we're really at the LOI stage, looking that it adheres to EMSL and BER's mission. There is no review of the scientific merit of your proposal at that time. It is just making sure that we are getting proposals that respond to the call and align with the mission. So once we review those LOIs, again, the vast majority, well over 90–95% of them are invited for a full proposal. And at that time, if you haven't already, we hope that you are engaging with EMSL staff on your idea, your experimental design, your plans for your research, and engaging with our staff who are very helpful for you to understand what resources are available at EMSL, what is a reasonable number of samples, scope of work to be done. They can help you answer any technical questions that you may have. I would say if you were working on a FICUS proposal as well, I'd suggest that you reach out to other facility staff, not just EMSL staff. All the staff at these facilities is happy to engage with you and discuss your proposal. So once the full proposal submission deadline closes, at that time, the proposal goes through a series of internal reviews. These are largely technical and safety related. Our subject matter experts here at P&L review them and make sure that this is the type of work that can be conducted at our facility and that there's no risk that we're exposing ourselves to that we can't do. I think we've recently moved away from quite a bit of RAD work, and so RAD is an area where we really don't accept proposals on anymore. And those are the types of reviews that are done at that point. And then once those reviews are done, it goes along to our external peer review panels. And those folks have been assembled largely with the input and selection from our science area leads in each of those 3 science areas. Put together these panels based on the content and the ideas being proposed during the call. And we send these proposals out to reviewers to do their preliminary assessment and then convene the panel. There's a panel for each science area that meets for each of these calls. And they go through and rank these proposals, assign a score, and then they will be providing you as proposers with comments and feedback on your proposal. These external peer reviewers are given our criterion that are established during the call, and there's weighted criteria, and then they are scoring the proposals based on that criteria. Typically, those criterion are scientific merit and quality of research, team qualifications, relevance to EMSL's and BER's mission, appropriateness of resources requested, and then the impact on EMSL science areas. And again, these typically are the same, but as we had with our double-blind peer review process, that we remove the weighting for the team qualification score. So it is really important that you're submitting, even if you're a returning submitter, that you read through the criterion and make sure you know what the rubric is and what the weighting of the score is for each of the criterion that you'll be measured against. And the ultimate goal of our peer review panels is to produce a ranked list of the proposals in the order, and then EMSL goes through based on our available funding and draws a cutoff line based on how the proposals rank. And if you're successful, you will receive an award notice. So that's a little bit about the overall process of what we go through. Now I just wanted to step through a few slides about what you can do to make your proposal more successful. First thing I'd recommend is that you make sure that you read all the requirements of the call. You read the proposal topics that are being addressed, make sure you're addressing those. At times we have highlighted capabilities that our science areas are highlighting, and make sure that you're addressing that within your proposal. All of these resources can be found on EMSL's website. We also have an EMSL Learn channel where there's a lot of great videos out there, including a talk very similar to this one that some of my colleagues have put together, giving you hints about both scientific area and then how to submit. There's also a wealth of contact information there, and you can reach out to anyone that you may know. There's also a way to just submit a general query, and we'll get back to you. Okay, so once you know about the schedule, you know about the call process, it's time to get ready and actually write and put your proposal together. So a few tips here. You need to make sure that you're actually specifically writing to that review criteria that I've talked about before. And it's really important that you also make sure that you're aligning your proposed research with BER's mission. As a BER user facility, that is our #1 goal, to support that mission. And all of our proposals, it's important that it is clear that the work is being done within that space. To make it helpful for reviewers to understand what you're planning to do, make sure you provide clear objectives, a clear hypothesis, your project plan, and what specifically your needs are from this facility, or in the case of a FICUS proposal, the other facilities. Don't make it difficult for us to determine what type of resources that you need and make assumptions about what you may or may not need. All right, my next tip here is to make sure you engage. I've mentioned this before, and you're going to hear this over and over again. Please do reach out to staff. We EMSL staff are available to you at any time during this process, whether there's an open call or not. Staff are happy to engage with you. They have a lot of insight into this process, and many are just passionate about the work they do and would be happy to help you, assist you in your proposal effort. And I also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, this whole process is extremely competitive. So if you're not successful first, I would encourage you to be persistent, apply again. We have many people who resubmit to future calls, and based on the feedback they're provided, they take that into consideration and revise, and ultimately end up being successful. So just because you get a rejection letter once does not mean that you would not be successful in the future. Okay. I think this is kind of a repeat of what I said earlier, but again, just driving home the point that if you know who to contact at EMSL and you're familiar with them, by all means, go ahead and reach out to them. If you don't know, you can go to the EMSL website under, if you're searching on instruments or resources, at the bottom of each page, there's often a key staff member that you're welcome to reach out to directly, or you can simply send an email to emsl@pnnl.gov. That sends something directly to the user services team, and we're happy to put you in touch with anyone to make that connection with staff for you. Okay, so now you understand the process, you know that there's a call open, you've done some of your writing, you've drafted, you're working on your abstract, and you're getting ready to submit your proposal into our user portal. As you're working on your proposal, there's a few things that I just wanted to point out here. The first thing is that our user portal, which we refer to as Nexus, is more than just a proposal capture system. We are expanding the capabilities within there. And so if your proposal is successful, much of your project will be managed through that system, including the submission of metadata information. Project communications can be tagged in there. You can tag and add publications. So there is a wealth of information within that system. You can also will be able to go in there and access your data as it is released. And so it's important to make sure, one, that as PI, you get registered for that system, and that you add any other team members, and don't wait to the last minute to do all that registration. Anybody who is on the team will then have fully access to all of that information in there at that time. So it just makes sense to get everybody registered at the beginning. It's a pretty simple process. So when you're getting ready to actually submit the information, as the system is evolving, some of the keystrokes and details into how you're submitting changes as it's evolving. But the main information that we're asking for is pretty much the same throughout this process. We're going to be asking for a project description. Currently, that is something that you attach as a PDF. That's the main scope of your work. Oops, keep hitting this. I'm going to set that down. That's the main body of your scope of work, what it is that you're planning to do within your project. That's where we really want you to make sure that you're clearly defining what it is that you're doing, addressing that review criteria. Why is it that you want to use EMSL? What resources are you planning to use? Next, we're going to ask about team members. PIs and co-PIs require a little bit more information than other team members. That's largely related to our rules as a national lab facility and the requirements involved. So we will be asking you for citizenship information, as well as if you have an ORCID ID, we ask that you can link that to your account. And then for other team members, we simply are looking for the institution that they're affiliated with. If successfully awarded, we do require a non-proprietary user agreement be signed with every institution that a project team member might be a part of, but that's something that we can deal with upon award down the road. And then finally, we're going to be asking about resources that you're going to be requesting at your time during the proposal at EMSL. What type of instrumentation are you looking for? Do you need the assistance of EMSL expertise staff along with it? Or are you an expert user yourself? If you're just looking to use Tahoma and you know how to do it, that's great. But if you need assistance from technical staff, you can indicate there as well. All right, now I've put together, so we have, I'm not familiar how familiar all of you are with the structure of EMSL, but we have our research areas are divided into 3 science areas, and within them we have a team of integrated research platform leads that we refer to commonly as IRPLs. And some of these, this information here that I'm sharing is from our IRPLs who have been with the program for quite some time. They are very familiar working with users, helping them scope their research, also are familiar with proposing research to other funding agencies as well. But these are some of the key ideas that they felt would be useful to share. So number 1, in terms of preparation, make sure that you have generated a clear and compelling hypothesis. Make sure that it's clear and that it's easy for reviewers to understand what it is that your research is planned to do. Here's another plug for reach out to EMSL staff. IRPLs and other EMSL staff are happy to work with you. As you can imagine, as the deadline of a call draws closer, they become increasingly busier and busier with requests. So the earlier you can reach out to them, the more time they have to devote to help you with your research. So start early. In terms of what elements make a strong proposal, again, there's that clear defining of what your scientific question is, and also demonstrating clearly what your experimental design is. What is it that you're trying to do? What type of samples will be you sending? What type of analysis are you wanting to be done with those samples? What type of measurements are you trying to achieve? What is the story that you're trying to draw with that proposed research? Having clear and understandable language is also helpful. You have a very short page limit usually with these proposal calls. And so the more concise and clear you can be when putting together your plan, the better that will review. And as I mentioned before, make sure that you are addressing and being responsive to the review criteria that is defined in the call. Okay, now I wanted to share just a few common themes that we've noticed during the review process of proposals that are not successful. So shared with you lots of great tips of how to be successful, but there's some common areas where we see where proposals typically aren't successful, and I wanted to share those with you. Sometimes people come in with a proposal and they want to do everything under the sun. So the proposal is a little bit too broad, much like anybody's budget, personally or within an organization, we have a limited number of resources. So narrowing your scope, making it clear what it is you want to do without being too broad is very helpful. I think that also goes along with having a very clear hypothesis of what you want to do, as well as outlining that timeline that's realistic of what you're going to accomplish within that time. Sometimes we get proposals where people may be requesting a resource, but it's really not clear what it is what the outcome from that you want, or how that ties into your story. So being very clear about what you're requesting and why you're requesting those resources. I think another big one here, I'm not going to read all of these for you, but another big one on here is reviewers will sometimes not understand when you're making assumptions about some preliminary data that's not being provided or referred to or referenced. And so you're kind of making that leap into the next space without having a solid understanding of where that information came from. And finally, this last one here, I think on this slide is important. We really do our best to build a team of our external peer review panel that is in tune with the call topics and the highlighted capabilities in the science area. Not everyone is extremely well versed within those specific areas. So make sure when you're proposing that you're not being too into the weeds and details and using terminology that can be well understood within the scientific community without going too far into the weeds. Okay, here's just a few more here. Not addressing mission relevance, I think, is always a key one. Again, we're a BER user facility, so you need to tie in how your research fits into EMSL's mission and BER's mission. And I think also this last one is really important. Unclear description of impact and next steps. Why is it that your research is so impactful that EMSL needs to make the award for that proposal? Really demonstrate what that is. All right, just a few more summary slides here. If you haven't picked up on my message already, consult with EMSL staff. They are happy to work with you, and the earlier you reach out to them, the more opportunities you have to get their insight, and they'll help you. Pay attention to our website, follow us on social media, pay attention to the call topics, the deadlines. When our Nexus portal closes, the call closes, we can't accept any late proposal submissions, so pay attention to that. If you are planning to submit, go to that Nexus portal and get registered for an account. It just takes a few minutes, but that will alleviate any issues once you're ready to compile all your information and actually submit your proposal. Make sure you write to that review criteria and be clear in your writing about what it is you're trying to do with your research, what your scientific hypothesis is, and your plans. And at any time, if you have any questions, please reach out to emsl@pnnl.gov and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And with that, I will stop and see if anyone has any questions. Quiet group.
Okay. Thanks, Nikki. That was really clear and really good. I'll just add one thing. Maybe for going forward. I think the EMSL data portals and websites have made great leaps and strides over the last couple of years, and they're almost at a point where you might want to think about having people look at those in terms of analyses tools as part of this. I think a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have recommended this, but now it's really gotten a lot better. So that people should, somebody like me who submitted one successfully 4 years ago, there was nothing there for analysis. You were still developing our packages in-house, and you had to sort of know. But now people can look at those and look at maybe what the data is going to look like when they get it and how to analyze that. And that should be back into the proposal process.
That's a really great point. You're absolutely right. EMSL has made great strides within this area. And when we rolled out our Nexus portal 1.5 or 2 years ago, the intent was to it's not just a proposal capture system, it's combining everything with your project, including that Nexus, that connection into the data portal. And our data release policy is changing as all these guidelines are within DOE. Data is the intent is for this data to be made publicly available, and that timeline is shrinking. And so there is this wealth of information out there. And I think that's a really great point, Jeff, that I should be focusing on, of encouraging people to go out there and access from the EMSL's main webpage now. At the very top of the navigation, there's a projects and data portal tab. And you can go there and then do a search and access anything that's publicly available. And that capability is continuing to improve.
And I think that'll help sort of new users who haven't used it to see that what they can get out. That feeds back into, okay, now I can see how to write the.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a great point. Thank you.